Hi everybody, I told you when I did my video about my premature birth that I would tell you later about a little bit about my early life. I went to regular public school. Before that, when I was a baby, Mom moved back from Oregon as soon as I got out of the hospital to St. Clair, Missouri, where her family was from. Where she grew up since ninth grade. They were from down south further in Dixon. And my grandpa moved him up here because he got a job with Merritt's in St. Louis. And St. Clair was more cost effective. Plus, he was able to get the house that my mom still lives in for $11,000 at the time, which was still a lot of money, but back in Mom was in ninth grade, so she was born in 53, so you do the math. That was still a lot of money. So she moved there, and my grandpa told my mom when she got off the plane, she had my sister by the hand, and my sister was about 2 at the time. And because she was 23 months when I was born in November, she turned 2 on Christmas, so she was a little older, she just turned 2. And my grandpa said, I looked at your mom and said, where's the baby? And I was so tiny that nobody could see me in the blankets. They thought Mom was just carrying a blanket for my sister. And it was actually me in there. So I was pretty tiny for a long time. Now, Mom lived with my grandparents for about 6 months until she was able to get a used trailer and move out on her own. And that, for 8 years, is where we lived, across from the elementary school in a trailer park. And when I was about 2, and I had just started walking around 2 years old, I had trouble sitting up, walking. It was delayed because of my cerebral palsy. And that's normal for some kids with a developmental disorder like cerebral palsy. And the guy at the laundromat in town where Mom would take us to do the laundry, because she couldn't very well leave us at home. They had a great big playpen and toys and everything, so Mom took us with her. He saw how I was walking. And if you've ever seen a ballerina walk on point, up on the tips of the toes, that's how I was walking at that time. And he helped Mom get me into Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children in St. Louis. And Mom said at first they wanted to see me every 2 weeks. And then they would move that out to every 6 weeks. And then they kept moving it out until by the time I was 5 years old, it was once a year. Mom said that I was so stubborn. I've told you about that. That I didn't know the doctor, so I flat refused to walk for him. Would not do it. So my sister had to she grabbed my hand and took me down the hallway. And my sister's not that much older than me, but she had the presence of mind to grab my hand and, come on, Mom says. She kind of just dragged me around, and I walked with my sister for the first time so the doctors could see how I was walking. And I have something called drop foot. Now, I know other people who have drop foot. I won't name names, but they would understand. But what drop foot is, the muscles in your foot here at the top and in the ankle are weak, and so they can't pull the foot all the way up. So instead, you're walking like this. Your toes drag under your foot comes through, and then plop. That's pretty much a simplified version of how a drop foot makes you walk. And I also was still on point at 5 years old. I was walking on the tips of my toes instead of on the whole foot like everybody else. I was walking like this. and my toes were starting to buckle. My toes were starting to do this because of the pressure of my body weight. Even when I was a little thing, you can't put a prolonged weight on point like that without your toes suffering, and my toes were starting to buckle. So they needed to bring my heel down. First 5 years of my life, my heels never touched the ground. So they had an experimental surgery, and they talked to Mom about it. And they says, Mama, we don't know if this is going to work. This is experimental. Shriners is free still, and it's not just for crippled kids. A friend of mine who got burned in a fire when she was 2 years old went to Shriners as well, and she's the same age I am. Apparently, her house caught on fire when she was about 2 years old, and she was afraid of the firemen and went to hide in a closet because of the fireman in the suit scared her. And she remembers that. And she got burned over, I think, 80 or 90% of her body. It was total body burns. And she was always very self-conscious of her scars. When we had met in high school, and she pulled me aside one day because it was really hot and the air conditioner in the high school was on the fritz. And so they let us bring cups of ice water, and I had this cup I had gotten from a recent surgery when I was in junior high school that measured out how much water you were drinking, and it said Shriners Hospital on it. I brought that with me, and she pulled me aside, and she showed me she had the very same cup, and she said, "How come you never asked about my scars?" And I looked at her. And the first thing that popped into my head was, what scars? So I said it. I'm one of these people that if it pops in here, it usually comes out. So I was like, what scars? And she goes, you're kidding, right? And I looked at her and said, Edna, you just look like Edna. You're just Edna. And she told me the story of her getting burned in the fire, and she got into Shriners to help with skin grafts and stuff. So they help a myriad of people, and it's all free. And so they told Mama, we have this experimental surgery that we might be able to bring her heel down so she can at least have a bit of a more normal walk. But Mama, this isn't going to be easy. And my mom's a single mom at this point, working at Hazel in Washington, Missouri, where they made leather briefcases, and they worked with vinyl and leather. And then she had my sister. And I know she was thinking, how am I going to do this? If it's going to help my daughter, go for it. But she had to have been thinking, she's not going to be able to walk. I'm going to have to deal with, how do I do this? How do I be at the hospital for? How do I raise my other kid? I really salute parents that go through this. And it's hard when you got two parents dividing the responsibilities. Places like St. Jude and Shriners and St. Louis Children's Hospital. All these places where these parents, I salute you. All you parents and the kids that go through it, I salute you. You mean a lot to those kids and in turn to me. But she said, okay. And they said, Mama, we're going to have to cut her heel cords. My heel cords were pulled tight, and they couldn't loosen up. That's part of the reason I couldn't drop my heel. And so they said, Mama, we're going to have to sever her heel cords on both feet, and then she'll be in the cast from her toes to her hips for several months while it heals. And then she'll be put in braces. Now, these braces are not like the plastic ones that you see today. Let me find my first picture. I've got some pictures out here for you. This is me in the hospital with Mama. And it says 9/26/81. So this was 1981. I was born in 75. So I wasn't quite 6 years old at the time. But there's my Mama. And there's me in the wheelchair. And of course you can see they've got my lap covered because I always have trouble with my legs being cold. I always have. They said there's a blood circulation issue. But that's me at Shriners. Now the braces, that's a good one. The braces that they put me in after surgery, there we go. I'm trying to get the glare off. Look like this. You see the white shoes I'm wearing, and they've got, I don't know if you can tell, but they've got metal up the side that goes around the lower leg, or the leg under the knee. They used to call these braces leg irons back in the 30s, 40s. There's a side view of the braces. And this was after surgery. Mom had spent the money. That was very hard for her, I know, because you can see Mom right there. She's right there, helping me go down the slide. For me and my sister to have a playground, a swing set at home. And so I don't remember Mom telling me about the surgery. I know she did, but I don't have memory of that. I don't remember getting ready for the surgery. I remember being taken into the OR. And I remember they put me on the surgery table and they were talking to me so that I wouldn't be as scared. And they used gas mask and they kept talking to me, and it was 9, so it was getting close to Christmas. And my grandpa, he would get points through Merritt's where he worked, and he'd let the grandkids pick out things on his points as Christmas gifts for their parents. And I wanted to get Mom an electric blanket. And so that's what me and Christy had decided on, to get Mom for Christmas with Grandpa's points. And they were talking to me about what color would the blanket be and all this, just to keep me talking so I was breathing regular. When they put this big black mask. Now if you've seen Star Wars, that big mask that Darth Vader wears, especially right here, that's kind of what it reminded me of. But they come at me with this big black mask with a black hose attached to it, and they're coming closer and closer. And I started to get scared, and they're talking to me. And by this time, they put you on the operating table. They put your arms out. You're in a T shape, and they strap down your arms to put the IVs in and stuff, so you're not moving. And that's when I really started to get scared and started to struggle. And I remember them putting the mask over my mouth and nose, and then I got sleepy. And the next thing I remember, I looked up and I couldn't talk because I was trying to say hi, and trying to move. And I heard, "Shit, she's awake," and I was gone again. So apparently I woke up shortly after slipping under with the gas, and they put me back under. They said that, that wasn't common, but I have always had a very high tolerance for medication, and they said that's what caused it. I had very, very high tolerance for the gas. They had to use more than they expected to keep me under. I don't know why. I've just always been that way. Now, I couldn't walk. And not being a dumb child, if something hurts, I'm not going to do it. So I was at a babysitter's, and sometimes when the babysitter couldn't take me, her daughter would. And I remember I wanted to go to school. It was time for kindergarten. But back in this time, they weren't set up for wheelchairs. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. They weren't really set up for wheelchairs at the preschool, the kindergarten. So I had to learn to walk. That's when they put me in the braces. And Mom and the babysitter got together, and they kind of conspired. And they noticed I had a big interest in going to school. I've always loved to learn. So they decided they would put me in front of a big picture window when the bus was pulling up, both in the morning and then in the afternoon. And I could watch the kids get on and off that bus. And my imagination just would fly. I would imagine all these cool things they were doing at school, and I couldn't go. Made me so mad. And Mom learned quick and very early to use the fact my sister and I both have kind of a temper against us at times. And that's kind of what she did. Not in a mean way, but to push me to do something. Because if something hurts, you don't want your kid to have to do it. And that's another thing. It had to have killed her. When she took me to Shriners in St. Louis, I talked to her as an adult about it. And she said that she dropped me off and went in with me, found my room, which is a ward room. And they had 6 beds in one room. Big room. You don't have a single individual bedroom. You have a ward. And there's it's a circle around a big nurse's station in the center that's a circle. And around that circle are different rooms. And each room has 6 beds per bedroom, per wardroom. And there's about 8 to 12 rooms per circle, depending on if it's intensive care or what. And mine had, I think, 10 rooms in the circle. And so she said she went out to the parking lot and got in the car and just put her head against the steering wheel and cried. Because she didn't want to have to leave me. And I did not make things easy on her. I threw the biggest fit, according to Mom, which I highly do believe, because I did that through my childhood. I hated to be left anywhere. And so it had to have been hard on her. And she had to work, so she couldn't be there every day. But like I said, my grandpa worked in St. Louis at a place called Merritt's. So he took his lunch break. And instead of going to eat lunch, he would come to see me at Shriners. And there was a group of us kids who didn't have mommies and daddies to help. I would see the other kids, and their mommies or daddies would shift off, staying with them 24/7 and getting them bathed and helping them dress and bringing them food from places that, to tempt them to eat instead of hospital food. There was a janitor that would come around, and sometimes if we had a vegetable that we didn't want, he'd come around at dinner time and let us wrap it in a napkin and put it in his trash can. I really liked that. Poor guy. I got mad. Mom told me, "I'll be here when you wake up. Take a nap." And I woke up late that night. And Mom had to go home and didn't want to wake me. And she wasn't there when she woke up, and she said she would be. And I was mad. And for some reason, he gave me a hammer to amuse myself with. I don't know why. I might have asked for it. I don't know. But I threw it. I didn't have my glasses on because I'd been asleep. I think that's why I missed him. I was seeing 3, and I remember throwing at the middle human, and it missed him. Because I was furious that Mom wasn't there. And when you're a kid going through it, you don't think that Mommy or Daddy have other responsibilities and they can't stay with you 24/7. You just know that Mommy's not there when Mommy said she would be there. And that's unfair. And so I kind of made it hard on the nurses, and they would wait till I would do something wrong, and they would wait till my grandfather got there at lunchtime. And like I said, there was a group of about 6 of us that didn't have the constant mommy, daddy, auntie that the other kids did. A lot of the kids would come from out of state or even out of the country. I remember one girl from Sweden, and They were waiting for her mom and dad to get there, and there was another girl. I don't remember where she was from. She was a tiny little thing. I was about 12. And I was nosy because a new patient came in the next room over, so I went over to see her. And she's this little bitty thing, couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, tiny little thing, just crying her eyes out, not able to understand a lick of English. And they were waiting for the translator and her parents. And she was from out of the country. I have no idea where. I have no idea what the intricacies surrounding her parents or their interpreter being there. I just know she was crying and couldn't understand what was going on with her. And so I grabbed her up out of the bed because I was 12, so I was a little bigger. I plopped her on my lap because I was in a wheelchair. I had had surgery several days before. And off we went, my gang of 6 of us and her in my lap. And we toured the hospital with her, you know, just going at top speed down the hall so she would laugh until the translator got there. But when I was 5, I didn't understand. And so when I finally got to go home, I gave Mom a little bit of the cold shoulder. You know, I was upset. And I know now that was hard for Mom because I've talked to her about it. But I finally got to walk, and I went to the end of the hall, pulled myself out of my wheelchair, and started trying to walk down the hall simply because I wanted to be on that bus. So I got to be able to go to preschool. I think this is preschool. Hold on, let me check. Yeah, this is 8081 Head Start, age 5. Mom's got it written right there. And what I think is cool, throughout this book, she's done this. But you see what she's written right there? My baby. And she's got an arrow point, and they got me sitting in the front row. Yeah, I'm right there. And you can see my little braces peeking out of my gown. So I was in those things for quite a while. And so that was my first surgery. And I wanted to read you something from my first grade years. I'm not going to fold this back. This is kind of fragile. But this is first grade recipes. And the class teacher was Miss Bell, first grade. And she had all of us come up to her desk one by one, and she told us to pick our favorite thing and then tell us how to make it. You know, pick the recipe and tell us how to make it. So, here's mine. Peach pie by Tanya Lambert. Full jar of peaches. 1 jar of honey. 1 bowl of whipped cream. Bake for 10 minutes at 20 degrees. And, you know, my classmates have theirs. Here's one by another one of the girls. She I won't say her name, but she wanted salad. That was her recipe. Whole bunch of tomatoes, a lot of lettuce, some cucumbers, some little red thingies, in quotes, radishes. Crumble it up with a fork and a knife. Use bacon and tomato dressing. You know, it's just a bunch of first graders with a recipe, and she made this little book. And my mom kept it all these years. What my mom did is she got a binder when we were in high school. She put our name on it, and then on the side, and the whole book is nothing but us, you know, me. My sister's got one that's nothing but her. And the first picture, I'm in those braces, but you won't be able to see that. But this is my Head Start picture from when I was 5. She even kept our field day ribbons. She put them in there later. So they're right there. And that was my first surgery. My next surgery, I was 12 years old. And that was the biggest one. They had to take and cut my hamstrings in half. And then they had to move muscles from the right leg to the left leg. 6 hours in total for the surgery, and 5 incisions on the left leg, 2 on the right. Because they had to also re-slice the heel cords. Because I had started to rise back up on my toes, which was actually common. And they were surprised that I had gone as long as I had without the heel cords tightening up again. And when you rub my heel cords now as an adult, you'll find a knot about that big on both of them. And it's a knot of scar tissue. But this was a huge surgery. Like I said, 6 hours on the table. And my mom and stepfather were there when I went in. Now, Shriners has this policy that if you have a little one and they have surgery, you can stay and they will let you sit in a rocking chair while your little one is waking up. And you can hold them and rock with them. And my mom and stepfather couldn't stay because the surgery was so long, and they had to get back to my sister. And mom had to work. They both had to work the next morning, so they couldn't stay. Because that was in St. Louis, which is, I'd say 45 minutes, maybe more, one way out of where I live. And so they had to get back for my sister, and because they had to work. And again, mom called when I was in recovery. And I remember talking to her, and they had just given me pain medicine about 10-15 minutes before. So it wasn't quite working yet, but it was just starting to trickle in. I think it was codeine and something else. I think it was codeine or morphine, because I had a bad reaction, so I think it was morphine. Because I am allergic to morphine, which we found out the hard way. So yeah, I think that one was morphine because I had a reaction shortly after. And she said, did they give you pain medicine? And yes. And we're talking on the phone because they wheeled me bed and all over to the phone. And there was another kid there who had mommy was in the recovery room and then switched off with daddy throughout the night because they kept me there overnight. And, I was jealous. I didn't have that. I was so jealous. And all of a sudden this man walks in. And he talks to both of us and comes over to my bed to introduce himself. Well, I knew who he was as soon as I got my glasses and could see. It was Jerry Lewis. I've always been a Jerry Lewis fan. I think I've seen everything he's made a couple of dozen times. And so I know who it was, And there were several recovery rooms there, and they had nurses actually in the room the whole time. And he asked them, where's her family? And they told him, that her family couldn't come. Because the other little one was her mom had taken him out of the bed and was sitting with him, in a rocker. And, rocking her until the pain meds kicked in and everything. And I had kept glancing over. And he said, he looked at the nurses, will she be here for a while? And that was getting close. That was in the morning. And they said, no, she's going to be moved to her room soon after breakfast. And he says, okay. And he looks at me, he goes, I'll find you. And I didn't expect him to do so. I didn't have a lot of faith that he would do that. And he left. And they fed me breakfast and did the checks and got everything under control from the reaction the night before to the morphine, and made sure I was safe to leave the ICU area before putting me back in my room. And later that night, it was right after dinner, And I got told later, Mom said that she had talked to the nurses and that he had come back to the hospital. And I don't know if he was staying close by or what, but he had come back to the hospital after dinner. And he sat with me for a while and he was getting ready to go. He's like, well, I'll let you go to sleep. And the nurse had come to check on me and give me whatever, meds or whatever. And they said, oh, don't worry about her. She won't go to sleep. I've always been one to sleep in very small snatches, 3 to 5 hours. 5 hours is actually a full night's sleep for me. Even as a kid, I would sleep in small snatches. So they knew I wasn't going to bed anytime soon. He says, oh, okay. And he said, you want me to stay with you for a while? And I said, yeah, that'd be nice. And we sat and talked well into the night hours. And come to find out, Mom found out later that he had come back to just about everyone in the hospital that didn't have parents with them to sit with them each one for a while. And that's one of the best memories I have. It was just so amazing. And he cared enough to come back and to sit with me and all the other kids who didn't have moms and dads and whatever. That was amazing, And then when I was 17, I had another surgery. I don't quite remember what they did during this surgery, but I think I was on the table for about 3 hours. And afterward, they had animals come in, and this was a first for me. I hadn't been there to experience this before. And there was this one golden retriever, beautiful dog. And I zeroed in on that little girl because she had 3 legs. She was missing her front leg. I think it was like cancer or something, and they had to remove her front leg. Her name was Sky. I even still have her picture. I should have pulled it out of the book for you. Yeah, they had a ton of animals, and I had never been able to experience that again before. So I met Sky. I got one of her pictures, and that was the first time I had been introduced to the world of service animals, therapy dogs and whatnot. And I was fascinated by it the whole time. And I never forgot that. I never let go of that memory because it just stuck with me so much that there was this dog. I mean, she and the other dogs, this little terrier jumped up in my chair and sat on my lap for the longest time. And it was just so awesome. And that I'd never had a service animal or been near a service animal before. So that was kind of special, really cool, I'm looking for her picture in case you're curious in my little book here. And in my book, I've also got, from Shriners, a lot of famous people came through. Sammy Davis Jr., Kenny Rogers. One time, I only got to see Kenny Rogers the second time he came through. He was supposed to come through a first time, and he, for some reason, had to cancel. So some of the Shriners guys, the adults, they got together, and they said they were his backup band, so that us kids wouldn't feel slighted. And I believed that for the longest time, that they were his backup band, until my mom was like, no, those were the Shriners. And I can't find it, darn it. But I got signed. Boom Boom Wheeler came to my town. He was part of the Globetrotters. And they were giving out little bitty black and white signed autographs. And I got one of those, but I remember talking to him. I don't remember what I said, but apparently it made some type of impact because, and I was 5 at this time. I hadn't been walking very long, so Mom wouldn't leave me alone because she was afraid I might fall because it was a gravel driveway. And he pulled me back behind the table and put me on his lap. And I sat there talking with him while he got other autographs signed and stuff, and I got a big color and a black and white. Hold on, I'll show you. There's, I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to, I can't see what I'm showing you. There you go. There we go. There's Tanya, and then Boom Boom Wheeler. That's the little black and white. And a few pages back, I have the color version, and it's a big 8x10. I got some Jerry Lewis, Sammy Davis Jr. We always got something from them when they came through. You know, we got signed pictures and whatnot. And I loved Shriners. I had some hard times there, yes, but at the same time, it was some of the most amazing times of my life because I got to meet so many neat people, so many fascinating and interesting people. And you get to learn that, you know, hey, you mean something to someone even if they don't know you. You know, they, even if they don't know you, they care about you. This was from the first visit that he wasn't able to come. So they gave us these. They're unsigned, but the other one is signed. And here's the 8x10 color from Boom Boom Wheeler. Yeah. To Tanya, love you. And Boom Boom Wheeler. And I don't show you those to brag, you know. But it was such a fascinating time because these people who were part of my dream, as far as I would look at the Globetrotters on TV and I would see how they move. I've always been an observer of how people actually move around because it fascinates me because I can't move like everybody else. And I would sit there and watch them. They would dribble the basketballs, which I've never been good at. And they would, you know, do their tricks and everything. And it was just fascinating to see. And I'm still that way. I still watch people and see how they move. And how that's how they're moving their foot like that. I can't do that. I wish I could do that. You know, that kind of thing. And so Shriners was difficult in that the surgeries were hard. You know, it wasn't easy for me. It wasn't easy for my family to have to leave me there. But at the same time, it was what was for the best. You know, I doubt, I highly doubt, if I had been left at Shriners, or without Shriners, rather, if I had been left without Shriners Hospital, and the surgery, and the therapies, and the braces, I probably wouldn't be walking, and I wouldn't be part of who I am today. They would never let me give up. Not the therapists, not the nurses, the doctors. They would say, when you got discouraged, I'm not going to give up on you. You're not going to give up on yourself. I'm not going to let you. Now, honestly, they could improve on the schooling because it was left up to us kids whether we wanted to go to school or not. And when I was 12, I think I visited the schoolroom twice. But now, I've heard that now it's totally different, which is great. because I was a snot. I didn't like doing my homework. But at the same time, I remember when I was in high school, I was a junior, 16, 17, and I had my last big surgery. And they brought me down to she told me to meet her at the therapy room. And she walked with me until we got to the correct hallway, and it was a very long hallway. And she stopped at the turn to the beginning of the hallway, and she said, "I'll see you down there when you get there." And she stopped pushing my wheelchair. And she walked away. She said, "We're at the end of the hall, turn left, last door on your left. I'll see you when you get down there." I was flabbergasted first, and then upset. She was pushing me fine till we got to that hallway. Why do I have to now make it myself? I was not very strong, and I could not push my own weight barely in the wheelchair. It took me half an hour to get to the end of the hall. And I had wondered why she had come to get me so early before my therapy appointment. Well, apparently this is what they were planning on doing. I'm assuming it was to help me get stronger and learn, to depend on myself a little more. But by the time I got to the end of the hall, I was angry. And then they told me it was time to get up and walk. I'd done this before, so I guess it shouldn't have scared me, but I was terrified. They didn't give me a walker. They didn't give me crutches. They gave me 2 therapists on either side of me, and they reached out their hands to help me stand up out of the wheelchair. And I was supposed to walk across the room, or as close to across the room as I could get. There was uneven bars not that far from me. I don't think it was even across the room. And they each had one side of me holding my hands and stuff. And they said, "Lean on us if you feel like you're going to fall, and we'll help you." I was absolutely terrified every time I had to learn to walk. Scared to death. Because I just knew I was going to fall. I just knew it. And it would be painful to fall. It would be embarrassing to fall. I knew I couldn't do it. And they kept pushing me, nagging at me. At least that's how I felt. So finally they helped me up out of the chair, and I went to take my first step. I was watching the ground the whole time, waiting for it to come rushing up to meet me. And we took a couple of steps, and I was still terrified. And one physical therapist looked at the other and said, "Was she leaning on you?" The other was like, "No, she wasn't leaning on me." And they both had said that I wasn't leaning on either one of them. And so after we got to the uneven bars, and they had me walking in between them and doing some exercises, and told me next time we would do stairs, and did some other exercises, and put me back in my wheelchair. And they didn't give me crutches or a walker to take back with me. And they said, "You know where your room is now, just, you can go on." And again, they weren't pushing the chair. So I had to do it. I didn't like that. I was not good at it. I was not very strong. And getting through a doorway, if you have to open the door in a wheelchair, is tricky enough to begin with. If you're not used to having to do it, it can be really scary, and it can be difficult to do. Because you got to halfway kind of open the door, swing the legs of your wheelchair around so the door rests against you, so it doesn't shut on you, and then hold it with one hand and kind of push yourself through. And these were very heavy doors. And then I had to get down that long hallway and turn and go down another long hallway just to get to my room. And it had taken me half an hour just to get down one hallway. And they came and checked on me a couple times, but they would not, the nurses and the doctors would not grab the chair and just push me back to my room. They made me do it. And one of the nurses goes, well, how did it go once I got back to my bedroom? I grumbled, of course. And she goes, well, I don't see any crutches or a walker. Did they say they were going to bring any down? And I said, no. And she said, okay, maybe you don't need it, but it, and they never minced words. They wouldn't lie to us kids. And I loved that. Because Mom told them, don't lie to her. She asks you a question, I don't care what her age, she's old enough to hear the answer. And they said it could be a bad thing that they didn't give you crutches or a walker, or they're not going to bring any down. It could mean that you're going to have more therapy before you're allowed to walk outside of the therapy room. And I was so disheartened because I wanted so bad to get back on my feet, because I knew if I could get back on my feet, I could go home, get back to life. But if they didn't want me on my feet out of the chair in a more normal way, back in my room and stuff, in the ward, then I knew I wouldn't get to go home yet. And turns out they didn't give it to them, not because they didn't want me up on my feet, but because they thought I didn't need it. And that confidence they had in me when I had none in myself, that was bolstering. But it was also terrifying. Because if you think in here that you can't do something, you're right, you can't. Because you've already failed, because you're not letting yourself think of the possibility of doing whatever that is. Make sense? When I was 12, the biggest surgery, obviously I wasn't walking right after surgery, but I got to go home and I still couldn't walk. My stepfather, man, talk about someone to respect, to truly respect. He married my mother. And my sister and I like to say we married him as a group. Because my mom did say, George asked me to marry him. What do you think? Granted, she was going to marry him whether we liked it or not, but she listened to our opinions. Oh, I found it. She listened to our opinions on the matter. And that was something that was special. This is Sky. This is Sky. And so here he is with this, and they met because we moved into the trailer court where his niece was living right behind us. And the fact to me that this man never treated me different. He was willing to marry someone who already had 2 kids and who he was told from the outset, Mom said she was very honest about it, that I would have more therapy, more surgeries, didn't know if or when I was going to ever be able to live on my own. So back when they first got married, I think it was 8 or 9, the possibility of forever having an adult child with you was pretty prevalent. And yet he still became a part of my family. And no matter, even if Mom and George got into a fight or whatever, he always made sure, because I was always highly sensitive, and if they fought, I would get hysterical. And he always made sure I knew, listen, this is between your mom and I. I love you. I love your sister. I love your mother. You're my family. Don't ever think that I don't love you. And then I had my surgery when I was 12. And I was not going to be able, I was in the cast for 3 months, not allowed to walk, not even allowed to put my feet down. I couldn't put my feet down to the floor. I couldn't put them in any kind of normal reclined downward position because of the surgery on the hamstrings and the moving of the muscles. They wanted to keep them level and up. And so I had to be lifted. We were in a 12 by 60 trailer. So I had to sleep in the living room on a hide-to-bed couch. And then when Mom went to work, he gave up his job so that he could stay home with me. So I didn't have to go to a babysitter. He would cook for me. He would pick me up and carry me into the bathroom and then set me down with my feet propped up and then walk out and told me to holler for him when I was dressed and done. And he would pick me up and bring me back in the living room. And he didn't just put me in the recliner. He didn't just put me in the wheelchair. He made sure I got outside and did my homework, because the teacher would come in around 4:30 to the house, and made sure I did my homework and stuff. And this went on for months. So they knew I wasn't going to be able, I didn't think, I thought I could walk like normal when they took off the cast. I didn't realize that I was going to have to relearn to walk. At this time, I was only 12. And if you look at my legs now, one is the diameter of the calf muscle is smaller than the diameter of the right one, because that leg was in a cast for 3 months. And then they put something called Zimmer's over the cast so that the right leg was not in a cast, but the left was. And Zimmer's are foam, and they're about, I'd say, that thick. And they close with Velcro straps. They close like a clamshell, like this, over your leg. So you can't bend your knee. You can barely move your legs from side to side, because, the ones I had were kind of up the hips a little bit to prevent me from moving my legs. And then from the knee down on the left, I was in a cast. So even if I had a bath, the cast had to be wrapped up. I had to be, someone there with me in case I slipped, down from a seated position in the tub, because I wouldn't have been able to pull myself back up. And then they knew I was going to have to learn to walk again. A normal procedure for this. You go back to Shriners and they cut off your cast with what looks like a motorized pizza cutter, if you ask me. And when it approaches the skin, when they start cutting that cast off, it's a little warm. They won't hurt you. They're not, if you have a kid that's getting a cast off, they're not going to hurt you. But it can get a little warm and a little scary when you hear that, it's very loud, vibrates the whole cast. But they cut through most of the way, then they use what looks like a little bitty crowbar, pop the thing open, and then they'll bring your leg out of the cast. And when they do that, your leg is white, covered in dead skin, and a lot of, the hair's grown longer, and the dead skin's there, and the skin is very fragile, kind of thin. And so my nurses put lotion on my legs pretty quick to get, and help to clean me up to get some of that stuff off. And I still thought I should be able to just hop up and walk. And then they told me I was going to have to stay at Shriners for therapy to learn to walk. Now, do you think I took that very well? I didn't. My grandpa and my stepfather had taken me up there, and they were teasing with me the whole time because they knew I was scared, because I didn't remember getting the cast off when I was 5. So I had no idea how they were going to take it off. And I was scared. And, they were teasing, oh, we're going to drop Tanya off and get rid of her for a while. And didn't occur to me till they got the cast off and said I would have to stay there, that I wasn't going home that night. Or so they thought. I threw a fit, and my grandfather's name was George, and so was my stepfather. That could get confusing at times, but Grandpa and George, they looked at each other, and George just kind of shrugged and gave a no, a nod of his head no. And so I got to come home, but I still couldn't walk. Grandpa carried me from the driveway back into the house because we were living in out of town, out of St. Clair, in a little town called Moselle. And it's very rural out there. Mom and George were given a plot of land with a trailer on it with 5 acres as a wedding present when they got married from George's best friend Willis. And so we lived out there. We moved out there. And we were in a 14 by 70 trailer this time, so I was actually able to use my bedroom throughout the some of the surgery. But see, when we were in the 12 by 60, because the other trailer had been moved back there, but it was still, the poured pad for the 5 acres was to fit a smaller trailer. So we had to wait until they could have the other pad poured and then move into our bigger house. So when I had this surgery, we were still in the little 12 by 60 trailer, and they had to fit my wheelchair, and everything in there. And that was tight. That was really tight. And they still tried to make Christmas special. They got a little evergreen that was planted in a bucket, and I got to wrap the bucket with wrapping paper, and so it looked like a big present. It was, they made sure it was fun. But so we came back, and they had poured the pad, but we hadn't moved into the bigger trailer yet. So I'm still sleeping in the living room on a fold-out couch that got collapsed during the day. And I sat in a recliner or my wheelchair. And if I was in my wheelchair, George would bring the wheelchair onto the back porch so I could get outside. But I couldn't wander around because we were, out of town. The ground was not set up for a wheelchair. And then they told him, all right, if she's going to go home, you're going to have to help her learn to walk. And they sent a walker. And I guess they told George, when she gets to this point, X, whatever X was for the doctors, you're going to have to take away the walker, or she'll get dependent on it and won't walk by herself. I didn't know this. So I get secure in my walker. I get on my feet and I'm walking around more with my walker. And I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm walking again. I'm doing great. I got my trusty walker, so I'm not going to fall. I'm great. And I go to bed one night in the living room, and George always folded the walker up and put it in the closet for the night. And he didn't put it in the closet. He took it out to the car. Am I going somewhere? Cool, where are we going? And it wasn't cool, where are we going? It was time to be tough. And he was tough on me, but he told Mom, I guess, later that it was very hard for him to make me grab the furniture. What I would do, just like a baby learning to walk, I would grab the furniture and pull myself along until I was a little more steady, and then I wasn't allowed to do that, and I had to walk free across the room. And even in a 12 by 60 trailer, across from the living room to the dining room is still a long way when you can't walk and you're not allowed to lean on anything. And yeah, I fell, but he would just make sure I was okay, pick me back up and put me at the start point again, which was usually the recliner in the living room, and say, you still got to make it to the kitchen table. I have a lot of respect for that man. How many people would do what he did? Marry into a family knowing he would have to help take care of this child, not knowing if the child would ever get on her own, and still take it on the responsibility. I don't know if many people would do that, but he did. And he would take us camping and everything normal families would do. And he would never let me, I can't do it. Just like my mom, he would sit back and, you know, now mom would come forward and go, okay, let's find you another way you can do it. Let's try this or this. That wasn't George's way. He had more of a way of, okay, figure it out. And he would sit back, make sure I was still safe, but wait for me to come to a conclusion that would be workable. And if I suggested something to him, then he would go, okay, but what if this happens? And eventually doing that, he would help me, guide me to the answer I needed. And growing up with those kind of influences helped me. They were hard for my family. They were hard for my sister. She grew up, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for her to be labeled the sister of the crippled kid. In fact, I know in high school she got into a fight several times, physical fight, because of me, because of what they were saying about me. I had a slew of cousins. I think there's 13 of us. My cousin Farrah passed away, so there's 12. But I was one of the two youngest, and so they would hear in school sometimes that I was getting bullied or whatever, and next thing I know, one of my cousins is going to the office because they decked someone or something. But I was taught not to fight by my grandfather and by my mother. They would tell me, and then later George, they would tell me, you can't physically fight to defend yourself. Don't try, you'll get the snot beat out of you. And sometimes my grandpa and my stepfather would, or my mom, they would play devil's advocate. And boy, that used to make me mad. And they would say things that I know now they didn't believe, or take a stance of what someone in school would say or do. And that hurt. I thought they were actually thinking these bad things and saying these, but they weren't. They were trying to help me learn how to defend myself in my own way. And thanks to them, I'm able to defend myself a little better mentally and verbally. I told one guy one time, one kid, when I was a senior, he was wanting to pick a fight because they had this game going, and it started before I even got there. I think it started with couple of the kids ahead of me in school. But if they could now it wasn't the whole school, it was a little group, a little clique of kids. But if they could do damage to someone who was physically or mentally disabled, they got points. And the person with the most points at the end of the school year was the cool kid or won or whatever. And like I said, it wasn't the whole school. It was a very small group. But even that small group could at times seem very mighty. And when I was a senior, this kid, young underclassman, was trying to pick on me to get points, And finally I got PO'd at him, and I looked at him and said, you know what? I refuse to have a battle of wits with an unarmed individual. Now be careful when you go home that your mother doesn't come out from under the porch and bite you. And I walked away. It took him 2 weeks before he come back and asked me, did you just call me a SOB? I was like, boy, that took you a long time, didn't it? I won't physically fight. My personality is also such that I'll let you hit me. I won't do it. I won't raise a hand. I'm peaceful. My favorite word is peace. But that doesn't mean I won't defend myself. I have physically got violent. You don't give someone who's 5 or 12 metal braces like I showed you in the picture. me see if I can grab the side shot. If you look, you can barely see it, but if you look, there's a metal bar running down the leg and into the shoe. The bottom of that shoe is also metal. And at least back then it was. And so I was armed, and I've always had a temper. So when I was 5, I got in trouble at school for kicking a kid with my metal shoes. When I was 12, I got sent to the office because we were coming back from lunch and this kid was behind me and he was quacking at me. And all my friends, if I had told them, if I start dragging my feet instead of telling me and making a verbal, signal that people could tell that they were correcting me the way I walked. Because, I needed to know that so I could concentrate on my walking, pick my feet up so I didn't fall. And I told him, tap the back of my heel cords with your shoe. Because I could feel that. And he had seen a couple of my friends do just that. It was their signal to me to pick up my feet. They wouldn't kick me in the heel cord. They would tap the back of my shoe. And the vibration, I could feel it so I could pull my foot up. And he saw him doing that. And I was 12 and we were coming back from the cafeteria and he was quacking at me and starts kicking me above the shoe in the heel cord. He's kicking. And I got mad. I lost my temper. And I said, when you turn that corner, if you don't stop picking on me, you're going to find yourself flat on your face. You can't do anything to me, cripple. And so I got ahead of him and I flattened myself against the corner wall so that he would have to come around the corner to go past me. And I stuck my foot out and tripped him. Boy, people just don't look down. They don't look up either, but that's a whole nother story. And I put my foot over his hand because he had fallen down and did this bit to catch himself. So his hands were splayed on the floor. So I put my foot over his knuckles, right here. And I said, if you don't leave me alone, you're gonna regret it. I'm not gonna leave you alone. So I put some pressure on his knuckles and I broke them. I also broke his thumb. And am I proud of it? No. Did I get in trouble? Oh, yeah. But wait, there's more. This kid, I don't know what it was with the air conditioners when I was in school. The air conditioner had gone out in the building we were in. It's called the Murray Building. It was where the 5th and 6th graders at that time were. And they had us wearing shorts. And my scars at the hamstring is the upper part of your leg and the back. And my scars were still, when you get out of the cast and after surgery for quite some time, the scars are very bright. They can be bright red to bright pink. It's not because they're infected, it's because they're healing. And once they heal, they kind of turn a little white and you can barely tell they're there. But at this point, because they were still healing and I had not been that far out of surgery, he could see the scars on the hamstrings and the back of my legs when I wore shorts because how bright they were, because they were still fresh. And he grabbed a baseball bat, and I didn't hear him come up behind me because, playground. Kids are screaming, kids are running. I was trotting over to the swing set where some of my friends were. They would always save me a swing so I could sit and swing without having to play with the other kids, especially when I had surgery or physical therapy. And I felt this pain bloom in the back of my legs, and it knocked me forward. It knocked me down to the ground, and he had grabbed a baseball bat and he had swung it on those hamstring scars and clocked me in the back of the legs. So I couldn't get up. All I could do was scream because it hurt so bad. And my friend Mariah, she was a fighter. Not a scrapper, a fighter. And she took off after him. She got in trouble for beating the snot out of the little crapper. But I had to go to the hospital. And they called an ambulance. They called my grandpa. They called my stepfather. And my stepfather told me later, and my grandpa had gone with me, and my stepfather had gone to the office. I guess they had talked about if something happened at school, here's how they would work it out between Mom, Grandpa, and me, or George. They used to believe in being prepared for any eventuality I might cause or get involved in, or my sister. And so Grandpa goes with me in the ambulance. They take me to a local town called Washington to stabilize me, and then they take me to St. Louis, to Shriners. And according to what I was told later, the kids' parents had been called in. And the kids' parents had gotten upset, but not for the reason you think. They had gotten upset because their precious little boy had to go to school with someone like me. And they withdrew him from the school. And I don't know how my family found out, but later I was told that he had been put in a private school. My stepfather's family is so large that if you did something bad at school, it would get home before you did. He was one of 19 kids, and his mom raised 2 that weren't hers, so 21 kids in that family, and their kids. So you can't hide from bad news. It got home before I did. And I guess he found out from somebody that they had put him in a private school, so he didn't have to go to school with kids like me. That's where he learned it. From his parents. Meanwhile, I had to have my legs fixed again and start all over. But people don't look at that. People would look at me and, and then they still do it as an adult. You know, I'll be in my motorized scooter or with my walker, or even when I've got Archer and he's helping me walk. And, I'm so sorry you're that way. That makes me so mad. I'm perfectly fine the way I am. I don't need your pity. I respect that you think you're helping me, but in my opinion, you're not. I would rather someone come up to me and say, hey, you're doing so much better than the last time I saw you. Good job. Keep up the good work. And most of my friends from school know that. Because we grew up together. And I'm still in the same town. So, yeah, most of the people in town really do know that. Or they know me because they helped me get Archer, you know. And they've asked, so a few of them have actually asked how I felt about that kind of reply. And I hate it. It doesn't do me any good, your pity. I'm this way because I'm supposed to be this way. You know, God doesn't make mistakes. Man makes mistakes and messes things up. But God can use that mess up to his benefit and his greater good. Was life always easy, especially as a child? No. And you try going to Walmart with a service dog. There's a reason the service dog community nicknames it Hellmart. It is so difficult some days. But it's me, and it's shaped me and who I am. That's my childhood. My mom used to say, I had to convince you to go to school every night. And when she was a single parent, she didn't know if I went to school or not, because she had to leave before we did. We were latchkey kids, and we'd get home before her, not by much, but a little bit. I used to wear the key around my neck because I kept losing the darn thing to get back in the house. And she would convince me every night. I'd come home crying, and she'd sit at the dinner table, help me and my sister with our homework, and she would be helping Christy with her homework and trying to convince me to go back to school the next day. So was it easy? No. But someone asked me one time, if you could have grown up without cerebral palsy, would you? And I say no. Never. Having my disability, and if you watch two of my other videos, you know how I feel about that word. Handicap, disability, however you want to see it, shaped who I am. Just like wearing glasses helped shape who I was. Every surgery, every experience, every piece of bullying that I went through taught me a lesson. Shaped who I've become. So I wouldn't trade any of it, the good or the bad. Because I wouldn't be who I am today, and I'm pretty proud of who I am. Am I perfect? No. Do I have more learning to do? Of course. That's what life's about. It's about the journey, the learning. As Miley Cyrus' song says, it's about the climb. And everything you climb over, every rock, every unkind word, every unkind action taken against you, or that you don't let affect you, creates who you are in here. So no, don't say I wish I didn't have glasses, or I wish I wasn't born this way or that way. Say, okay, I was born this way, but how can I use it to help me become a better person? That's my theory. That's my childhood. There's more to it, of course, but I told you I'd give you another video a little bit about my younger years, and those are some of the stories. I hope you can see a light in them, that learning and growing is part of who you are no matter what you go through. And maybe something I went through can help you or your child. If you have any comments, leave them in the description box, and I'll get back with you. But even if you're not the one that's disabled, if your little grandbaby is, or your neighbor's kid, or your child, don't you dare treat that kid with kid gloves just because they're not born like other kids. Don't you do it. Take an example from my stepfather, my mother, my grandfather, and you push that kid. Even my sister, I remember when I was 5, she would knot ropes, and she would give them to me to unknot so I'd have something to do with while she was at school. Or she'd lay down on the floor on her back and have me lay down facing her, and she'd put our feet together, and she'd have me push against her feet so I could use my leg muscles, and she'd help me with my exercises. Did she probably feel sorry for me at some points? Yeah, but she never treated me like that, because we weren't allowed to treat each other like that. And that's one of the best ways. Don't you dare feel sorry for that kid. You push them to be the best person they can be no matter what's wrong. And when they're older, they'll thank you for it. Have a good day, people. God bless.